Alex, I spent the better part of yesterday just staring at my bench, not working on it, just looking at the dents. There's one half moon gouge near the tail vise where a router bit got away from me back in '08, and honestly, it's like looking at a high school yearbook. Every scar tells a story of a project that almost went sideways.
Well, considering the state of your shop sometimes, that bench must be an encyclopedia. But seriously, it's the heart of the room, right? People always ask us where to start, and they want to build the grand cathedral of workbenches right out of the gate.
And that's the first trap. They see those massive 8 foot long monster benches on the internet, the ones that look like they were carved out of a single redwood and cost more than my first truck. It intimidates the spirit right out of a person. I've seen folks wait 3 years to start woodworking because they didn't think their bench was worthy yet.
It's the Instagram perfection tax. But you always say it doesn't have to be a masterpiece to create masterpieces. So if we're stripping away the ego and the $3,000 hardwood, what actually matters when you're building that first landing pad for your tools?
Stability is the king of the mountain. Everything else is just a nice to have. If you're trying to hand plane a board and the bench is shimmying across the floor like a nervous puppy, you're not woodworking, you're wrestling. I remember my first bench was actually just an old hollow core door thrown over two sawhorses. I tried to chisel a mortise and the whole thing bounced so hard it launched my mallet into a pile of scrap.
Atmospheric launch aside, Paul Sellers makes a great point about this. He's been working off a 5 to 6 foot bench for decades. He's not out there building a deck-sized surface. He argues that a huge bench is mostly just more space to lose your measuring tape.
He's spot on. A 2 foot depth is really the sweet spot. Anything deeper and you're just stretching your lower back into an early retirement trying to reach the screwdriver that rolled to the back. And the height? That's where the real holy wars start in the wood shop.
Oh, the height debate. I've seen people arguing about wrist-to-floor measurements like they're fitting a bespoke suit. Sellers leans toward 38 inches. Isn't that a bit high for someone who wants to put their weight into a plane?
Here's a little secret. Your body is better at adjusting than your benches. I've had guys come through the shop who are 6'4" and guys who are 5'6", all using the same 38-inch bench. The low bench school says you need to lean over to get leverage, but after 4 hours of that, your spine feels like a coiled slinky. I like a bench that meets me where I live. If it's high, you can always stand on a platform. If it's too low, you're just inviting a chiropractor to buy a vacation home on your dime.
Let's talk about materials. Most beginners feel like they need kiln-dried maple or steamed pear wood. But we're looking at these designs that use lumber store studs. Big box pine, is that really going to hold up for 10 years?
Better than you'd think. Pine is forgiving. It's the shock absorber of the wood world. Is it going to shrink? You bet. It's going to move and protest as it dries out in your garage. But that's why we use heavy joinery. You use draw bolt joinery or big carriage bolts, something that lets you give the nut a quarter turn 6 months later when the wood decides to get skinny.
When the wood gets skinny, I like that. It's basically a living organism for the first year. But I noticed in the woodsmith guides, they emphasize that draw bolt joinery. For the folks who don't have a mortising machine, that's a lifesaver, isn't it?
It's the ultimate get out of jail free card. You don't need the world's tightest tenon if you've got a steel bolt pulling the shoulder into the leg with the force of 1,000 suns. And honestly, it builds confidence. There's nothing more demoralizing for a new maker than spending 3 days on a complex joint only to have it rattle like a loose tooth because the wood was a bit wet.
I want to push back on one thing. I see a lot of these traditional designs, like the one Keith Rucker discusses, with the tool well. To me, a tool well just looks like a fancy trash can for sawdust and wood chips. Why not just have a flat, solid slab?
I used to be a flat slab purist myself. I thought, why would I give up 6 inches of workspace for a valley of shavings? But then I realized that on a flat bench, my chisels are constantly one elbow clumsiness away from a swan dive onto the concrete floor. A well gives your tools a home. It keeps the surface clear for the actual project. Yes, you'll be vacuuming out sawdust, but I'd rather vacuum a well than regrind a chipped edge on a $20 chisel.
Okay, I'll grant you the safety aspect. But what about the monarch of the bench, the vise? Rucker goes into deep detail about front vices, spacer blocks, and face blocks. If you're building your first one, do you go for the expensive cast iron quick release, or do you build a leg vise out of scrap?
If you got the patience, a leg vise is a beautiful thing. It's basically just a giant lever. But for a first build, go buy a decent iron vise. It's the one place where I tell people not to get too crafty. You want something that grabs hold and doesn't let go. I remember trying to make a wooden vise thread on my second bench. I spent 12 hours carving this screw, feeling real proud, and the first time I cinched it down on a piece of oak, I heard a crack that sounded like a gunshot. I walked out of the shop, sat on the porch, and didn't come back for 2 days.
The great vice fracture of the early 2000s. I think that's the reality people need to hear. It's okay to use hardware. It's okay to use carriage bolts. It's okay if your dog holes aren't perfectly aligned to the millimeter.
Speaking of dog holes, that's another design decision that trips people up. Square or round? Everyone sees those beautiful square dogs in the European benches and thinks they need to be a master with a mortise chisel.
And you're going to tell me round is better because you can just use a drill, aren't you?
It's not just the ease, though that's a big part of it. A round hole lets you use holdfasts, those big shepherd's crook-looking things you hit with a mallet. They are the most versatile clamping tool in existence. You can't use a holdfast in a square hole without a lot of headaches. Plus, if you mess up a round hole, you just plug it with a dowel and re-drill it. It's a very forgiving system for someone still learning the rhythm of their tools.
So the first bench philosophy we're building here is 5 to 6 feet long, 38 inches high, construction lumber, carriage bolts for the skinny wood factor, and round holes. It sounds surprisingly achievable.
That's the point. My biggest shop disaster wasn't a broken tool. It was a bench I made too pretty. I spent so much time on the finish, I even buffed the top with wax, that for the first 6 months I was afraid to actually work on it. I'd put a piece of cardboard down before I'd set a tool down.
You turned your workbench into a coffee table.
I did. It was pathetic. A workbench is a floor that's been raised to a comfortable height. It is a tool, not a trophy. The moment I finally accidentally hit it with a saw and left a mark, I felt this rush of relief. I thought, oh, thank goodness, now we can finally get some work done.
I think that's the takeaway for anyone listening who's staring at a pile of 2x4s and feeling overwhelmed. The right design is the one that gets you off the floor.
Exactly. Don't wait for the perfect moisture content in the wood. Don't wait until you can afford a $300 tail vise. Go get some construction studs, stack them up, bolt them together, and start making something. Use that number 4 plane to skin the factory edges off those boards, and you'll see the beauty hidden in that cheap pine.
And when you finally do put that first scratch in it,
Smile. It means you've officially graduated from a dreamer to a maker. That bench is there to serve you, not the other way around.
well, I'm inspired. I might go home and tighten the bolts on my own janky setup. Thanks for the breakdown, Tiger.
Anytime, Alex, just keep the mallets away from the hollow core doors. Trust me on that one.